Do you ever feel like you're being watched? So I want to make some eyes for an upcoming project, and I've seen people use cabochons before. I don't have any of those, but I do have some UV resin, so I thought I'd try to make some. Now what I didn't have was some domed moulds, but I love going to car boot sales and finding a bargain. The larger mould I was given for free, and when I spotted some of these fidget popper toys, I thought they'd make great eye moulds, and it all came to a grand total of 50p. So I'll be honest, the first attempt did not go to plan, but I thought I'd leave it in so you can learn from my mistakes. I completely filled the moulds up with UV resin, and I've seen some people use these popper toys as moulds before and thought that because the resin is clear, there shouldn't be any problems. Obviously, I should have considered that an opaque mould would limit how much UV could get through to cure the resin. I used my UV lamp on the moulds for a long time and noticed that, especially with the larger mould, the tops were kind of deforming and the resin underneath was not curing. I may have got a few usable smaller eyes, but the large ones did not work at all. It did make me realise that the larger eyes would be way too big for what I had planned anyway, so for the second round I only used the smaller moulds, and I added the resin in a couple of layers, setting between each layer. I do not have a pressure pot to get the bubbles out, so I tapped the mould down to get the bubbles to the top and then tried to pop as many as possible, but I knew that they likely wouldn't be perfect. To make sure the second round were fully cured, I flipped them over in the mould and UV lamped them again to cure what would have been at the bottom of each eye. This also meant that I should not be getting any fingerprints on the dome side of the eyes. Once I finally had enough resin eyes to experiment with, I got started. To make the pupils, I used a cotton bud, or Q-tip, dipped it in some black acrylic paint and then dabbed it onto the flat side of the eye. This should make an almost perfect circle and avoids having to touch the eyes any more than needed. The paint also wipes off pretty easily if you do make a mistake and need to try again. Once I had all the pupils done, I left them to dry overnight. Just to clarify, the dome side will be the front of the eye and the flat side is the back. We want to paint on the back. This does mean that the paint we put down first will be what shows up on the front, and anything that overlaps won't be visible. I wanted to try a few different techniques for creating these eyes. The first technique is just to paint the whole back in a single colour. The next technique is to put a colour blob in the centre and then another colour or shade around the outside and attempt to blend them into each other. The third is a kind of petal technique. I paint large petals covering most of the surface and then leave to dry. Later I'll go back and paint smaller petals to fill the entire space. The next technique is more of a starburst. Put a blob of paint in the centre and then use the wrong end of a paintbrush or a cocktail stick to push the paint into a starburst pattern. Again, I'll leave these to dry before adding another layer over the entire back to fill in the gaps. The next technique I tried is similar to the petals, but I used many small petals to fill the entire eye in one layer. Now I'm trying a swirl or a spiral, which is literally just a swirl of paint which I let dry, and then I'll come back later and fill the back with a different colour. And the final one I'm trying is a stripy eye. I did a few with thicker stripes and a few with thinner stripes. So once the paint was dry enough, I came back and filled in any gaps. Some of the paint had also cracked a little bit, so I went over any that had. And this is the final result. Honestly, I think the simplest methods made the best results. The whole colour and the stripy ones are my favourite. Let me know your favourites in the comments below, and also tell me what to try next. If I did this again, I would try to alter the pupil shape, maybe make them look a bit more reptilian or like cat's eyes. As always, thanks for watching. Stay tuned and subscribe to see how I put these eyes to use.